Do you like Sudoku? Do you like color by numbers but wish it had more math? Do you want to play a Mario game that has nothing to do with Mario? Then do I have a game for you. This, my friends, is Mario no Sooper Picross for the Super Famicom. Why do I say it like a weeaboo instead of saying Super Mario Picross for the Super Nintendo? After poor sales of Mario Picross for the Game Boy, Nintendo decided not to release the game outside of Japan.
This is Bill after playing Mario's Picross, the mind-building puzzle game where clues and numbers uncover hidden pictures. It's as challenging as Tetris. Mario's Picross on Game Boy and Super Game Boy.
It's so big!
Unique exercise for your brain.
Yeah, no idea why it didn't catch on with commercials like that. Anyway, the game was developed by two companies. The first, Jupiter, still makes Picross games, and currently has at least 7 of them out on the 3DS. The other company, Ape, created Earthbound, and would later become Creatures Inc., who makes the spin-off Pokemon games. So what the hell is Super Mario Picross? Picross, a portmanteau of picture and crossword, is a number-based logic puzzle. Using these numbers, the goal is to fill in these squares to recreate a picture. Let's start with an easy 5x5 puzzle. This 5 over here means that this row has 5 squares that are filled in, so let's do that. This column has a 3, then a 1, meaning that there are 3 squares in a row that are filled in, then a 1 by itself with at least 1 empty square between them. Because 3 plus 1 equals 4, and there's at least 1 empty one, that's 5, so we can fill in this whole column. The first 3 columns start with a 1, and there's a filled in square at the very top, so we can mark those as empty. Just like before, we have a 1, then a 3, which adds up to 4, plus a gap, which makes 5, so we can finish this column. By solving for these 2 columns, we've already found where this 2 goes, so we can mark the rest of the squares in that row as empty. So let's finish a few more squares, using the rules we've already learned, and damn, I filled in the wrong square. I'll talk about the different game modes later, but in the default Mario mode, mistakes are corrected automatically, and you'll receive a time penalty for the assistance. Hey, look at that! We've completed the katakana character Ma. The first 8 puzzles spell out Mario no Picross. Now let's try a harder one. This is a 10x10 puzzle. The 10 here is pretty obvious, but I like to start with the edges when I can, so let's start with this 8. By itself, we don't have enough information to fill in this whole column, but we can partially fill it in. If you imagine an 8 square long block at the very top, then another one at the very bottom, you'll notice they overlap. This overlap is where we can start filling in squares, and we'll do exactly what we just imagined. You should notice that there are 2 squares left empty on either side. 10 minus 8 equals 2. This applies to different numbers. 9 would have a gap of 1 on either side because 10 minus 9 equals 1, but also different size puzzles. If the puzzle were 15 by 15, and we had an 11 on the edge, 15 minus 11 equals 4, so we can fill in that row or column with a gap of 4 squares on either side. Isn't math fun? Now that we have some squares on the edge filled in, we can start growing from this edge. There's another 8 here. Part of it has already been filled in, so the block can only extend out 8 spaces starting from here, or from this empty square. Building on the logic we've already learned, we can fill in the overlap from the 2 possible starting locations and mark the squares that can't be filled in as empty. This is the foundational logic you'll use for the rest of the game, regardless of how large the puzzles become. As you complete each level, you'll unlock increasingly difficult puzzles. 15 by 15 is the standard size, but you'll eventually get to puzzles as large as 20 by 25. Oh yeah, and the manual explains all of these techniques, and probably more, in great detail. It's in Japanese, so if you can't read it, just appreciate that it's there, I suppose? I mentioned game modes earlier. By default, you'll be playing Mario's Super Picross, which features easier puzzles and autocorrection, but also has a 30-minute timer. There's also this box that pops up asking if you want a hint. The first option will fill in one row and one column for you. I don't find that it helps all that much, but others may find it more useful. Pressing left on the D-pad will put you into Wario's Super Picross. Puzzles here are more difficult, but there's no time penalty for incorrect markings. The timer also counts up from 0 rather than down from 30, which is surprisingly relaxing for a Wario-themed mode. You've probably noticed that none of the pictures have been Mario-themed, which, on one hand, is pretty weird not to include Yoshi, Toad, item blocks, and so on, but given the number of puzzles in this game, 300, they would probably run out of good Mario artwork. Actually, it's pretty nice having an assortment of mundane objects, because it's a good way to learn some Japanese vocabulary. Visually, the game is very functional, with just enough polish to not look like a proof of concept. It's a simple, clean interface that I very much appreciate. Music and sound effects are perfectly adequate, with just enough Nintendo polish to not feel out of place in the Mario universe. There are 3 different background music options to choose from, but it's unlikely that you'll ever feel it necessary to turn off the default tune. I'm giving Mario no Super Picross an uncharacteristic 5 out of 5. It's simply a great puzzle game, nothing more, and that's exactly what I love about it. Loose cartridges can be found for about $3 to $5, and complete in-box copies can be found for $10 to $20. There is no need to know Japanese to play Mario's Super Picross, but you'll need either a Super Famicom or a Super Nintendo that has been modified to accept Japanese cartridges. And it has mouse support. And that's it. I'm out of words. If you found this review helpful, there's a thumbs up button that looks roughly like this you can click on. If you thought it was awful, then you can... Questions or comments? There's a thing for that. Also, that subscribe button. It's up to you. No pressure. Until next time.